The hollowing. A blackwood cursed the mist never truly left Black Hollow. It slithered through the cobblestone streets like a living thing, coiling around the weathered storefronts and clinging to the boots of those few souls who still called this forgotten town home. The obsidian mountains loomed above it all, their jagged peaks cutting into the sky like broken teeth, casting perpetual shadows over the valley below. Everyone knew the stories whispered in hushed tones around dying fires, about how the silver mines had swallowed men whole generations ago, about how the earth itself seemed to breathe when the blood moon rose. Lorenzo Blackwood knew more than stories. Carried the truth in his bones and the weight of his family name, in the haunted look that had lived in his father's eyes before he vanished into those cursed tunnels 5 years past. Lorenzo stood before the Blackwood mausoleum as evening bled into night, the autumn chill biting through his worn coat. His fingers trembled slightly as they traced the names carved into the black marble, each one a testament to his family's cursed legacy. The Blackwoods had been the first settlers in this valley, drawn by rumors of silver veins thicker than a man's arm. They found their fortune, but at what cost? Each generation ended the same way, vanished or worse. His father's name, Elias Blackwood, still looked fresh despite the years, though no body lay beneath it. Just another Blackwood lost to the mine. The journal in his coat pocket seemed to burn against his chest, its pages filled with his father's frantic writings, about veins of black silver that moved when touched, about the singing voices that called from deep underground when the moon turned red. Tonight, that same blood moon would rise again, painting the mountains in crimson light. The townsfolk had always treated the Blackwoods with a mixture of reverence and fear. As Lorenzo made his way through the deserted square, he could feel their eyes watching from behind drawn curtains. Old Man Crawley spat at his shadow as he passed the saloon, muttering a warding charm under his breath. The few people still out on the streets averted their gaze, crossing themselves as if he carried some contagion. Only Eliza Hart met his eyes through the frosted glass of her apothecary window, her dark eyes knowing. She'd been his closest friend once before the mines took her brother the same year his father disappeared. They had shared that bond of grief, though neither spoke of it anymore. The bell above the door jingled softly as Lorenzo entered the apothecary. The scent of dried herbs and something sharper, wolfsbane perhaps, filled the air. Eliza didn't speak at first, just stared at him with those piercing eyes that always seemed to see too much. When he placed the pocket watch on the counter between them, the cracked glass caught the lamplight, scattering prismatic shards across the worn wood. The hands were frozen at 3:17 a.m., the exact time Elias had vanished, except now, impossibly, the hands were moving. Backward, Eliza's breath hitched. Without a word, she reached beneath the counter and slid a bundle of oiled leather toward him. Her fingers lingered on it for a moment, as if reluctant to let go. Inside lay a revolver with strange symbols etched into its barrel, protection sigils, Lorenzo realized, and a knife with a handle carved from what the old stories claimed was a Saint S rib bone. "You'll need these," she whispered, her voice rough with unshed tears. For when you meet what's left of him, there was no question in her words, only grim certainty. The path to the mine entrance was overgrown now, the once well-trodden way reclaimed by the forest. Brambles clawed at Lorenzo's clothes as he pushed through, their thorns drawing blood that welled up in dark beads on his skin. The mine entrance had been boarded up for decades, but the wood was rotten now. The nails rusted through. It took little effort for Lorenzo to pry them free. The mine exhaled as the last plank fell away, a long, shuddering breath that carried the scent of wet stone and something older, something that had no name. His lantern flickered as he stepped inside, the light trembling against walls that glistened unnaturally. His father had been right. The veins in the rock weren't silver. They moved. The descent was gradual at first, the tunnel sloping gently downward. But soon the angle grew steeper, the air thicker. Lorenzo's breath came in short gasps, not from exertion, but from the oppressive weight that seemed to press in from all sides. The deeper he went, the more the tunnel seemed to breathe around him, the walls contracting and expanding like the ribs of some great beast. The veins of black silver pulsed in time with his heartbeat, their rhythm growing more pronounced as he ventured further into the earth's belly. Then, faint at first, came the singing, a child's voice, Marietta's voice. His little sister, dead for 15 years, singing the lullaby their mother had once hummed to them both. The sound was impossibly clear, as if she stood just around the next bend. Lorenzo's heart clenched at the memory. Marietta's laughter echoing through Blackwood Manor, her small hands picking wildflowers by the creek, the way she'd clung to him during thunderstorms. The sound pulled him deeper into the mine's gullet, his feet moving almost of their own accord. The tunnel opened abruptly into a cavern so vast his lantern light couldn't touch the ceiling. The air here was different, charged, like before a storm. The ground beneath his feet was unnaturally smooth, worn down by something far older than human feet. At the cavern's center stood an altar not of stone or wood, but of bone. Fused together in a grotesque mockery of worship, the skeletal remains of countless victims. Some were fresh enough that scraps of flesh still clung to them. Others were so old they had turned black with age. The arrangement was too precise, too deliberate to be accidental. This had been built, constructed, worshipped at, and kneeling before it, his back to Lorenzo, was a figure in a tattered coat. The fabric was familiar, the same heavy wool Elias had always worn when checking the mine shafts. Lorenzo's throat tightened. "Father?" The figure turned slowly, as if moving through water. Elias Blackwood's face was still human, but only half. The right side remained as Lorenzo remembered, the strong jaw, the crow's feet at the corner of his eye, the salt and pepper beard. But the left side had melted, reformed, twisted into something that should not have been able to smile. The skin was slick and dark, like the veins in the walls, the eye beneath it glowing with a sickly yellow light. "Down, niece." And yet it did smile, the mouth stretching far beyond human limits. "Do do 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 Behind him, the shadows moved. What happened next came in fragments, his mind protecting him from the full horror. The gunshots, the blessed revolver bucking in his hand, the bullets doing nothing but making the thing wearing his father's face laugh. The way the shadows unspooled from the walls, taking shape as they came, some humanoid, others formless nightmares of shifting darkness. The altar humming, vibrating, the bones rattling like teeth in a skull. His father's one remaining human eye, pleading as Lorenzo drove Eliza's bone-handled knife into his chest. The mind screaming, not in pain, but in ecstasy. The world going black as something vast and hungry turned its attention fully on him for the first time. Dawn found Lorenzo crawling from the mine's mouth, his clothes torn, his skin streaked with dirt and something darker. The first rays of sunlight stung his eyes that now held flecks of unnatural black silver in their green depths. Eliza waited for him, her face pale in the morning light, her hands clenched around a rifle. She knew immediately he hadn't come out alone. "It's quiet now," he told her, staring at the rising sun as if seeing it for the first time, but not forever. Behind them, the mine entrance collapsed with a sound like a sigh, the earth itself seeming to settle. Somewhere beneath their feet, something vast turned over in its sleep. And in the depths of Lorenzo Blackwood's shadow, something darker than shadow watched the world with patient, hungry eyes. The new pastor discovered the Blackwood mausoleum unlocked come first frost. Inside, every name pulsed faintly in the marble. All but one. Lorenzo's name remained still. For now. In her apothecary, Eliza Hart counted the days until next blood moon, her hands steady as she poured molten silver into bullet molds. The townsfolk spoke in whispers about how Lorenzo never cast a shadow at noon anymore, about how the animals in the woods went silent when he passed. And deep below Black Hollow, the veins of the earth began to quicken. The mine would wake again. Next time it wouldn't be content with just a black wood. The town had always feared the dark. Soon, they would learn to fear the light too, for that was when the shadows grew longest, and what lurked beneath Black Hollow stretched its claws toward the surface once more.